What is up, guys and girls? So it's like 2 a.m. I just read the last two chapters in Naruto. Um, and I could not go to sleep until I did a review on this. So let's just get started on this. This is for my 10 or so viewers who watch my channel. This is out to you guys. Um, I know it's not a lot, but I thank you guys for watching, and therefore I have had to upload this. I had to talk about it. So I read both chapters straight through. There's a lot to be said, and I actually watched Sawyer Seven Mage. I'm sure you guys know who he is, the one of the top Naruto reviewers on YouTube, and he, as well as all the other reviewers, probably summed up the big points I wanted to talk about. But I have differing opinions on certain stuff. So let's just get started. The first thing though, let's get to the One Piece reference. I think it's very, very obvious that it was a One Piece reference at the end. I'm sure you guys noticed in the last chapter, um, uh, Bolt, Naruto's son, paints like this stuff on Naruto's head, his sculpture, and in addition to the character's bad dad, there's the picture of pretty much a One Piece skull. You got the straw hat and then the skull, skull and crossbones, and it's definitely a One Piece reference for sure. I mean, it's not even debatable. Sawyer Seven Mage did not even debate it. He was like, "This is One Piece reference for sure," and obviously, this they're the big three. It's One Piece, Naruto, Bleach. Funny enough, if you look at the sales, I don't think those three are like the top three that sell the most and make the most money, but they are like considered the big three in terms of popularity. So I definitely tilt my hat. I very much loved that whole thing. I'm tilting my hat off to him, tilting his hat off to One Piece. I think out of all the manga out there, that is the manga to tip your hat off to, because as far as similarity to the Naruto genre, One Piece fits right in. It's not similar, but in terms of genre, similar main characters, similar sort of theme, the time skip, whatever. One Piece, and its success, I very much love the whole tipping one's hat off to it. And if you compare that to anything else like Fairy Tail or Claymore or Bleach, they're all completely different in terms of taste, pace, how dark it is, and how relevant or similar they are. I mean, even Ichigo. If you compare Naruto or Luffy to Ichigo, they're completely different. Ichigo is not the same sort of positive, optimistic go-getter, and somewhat stupid but naive and optimistic as Naruto or Luffy or Goku. So I very much like that whole thing, and that's the first thing I had to say. Having said that, another big thing was that whole thing where they pan out from Naruto and Sasuke bleeding on the ground with their arms, and then it pans out and you see that they're lying on the broken hands of Hashirama and Madara sculpture, who have created, as you guys know, that sort of linkage with the two fingers sort of holding each other. I thought this whole thing was pretty cool, in my opinion. I thought it was pretty awesome. And just showed how they link together, and then you see like a silhouette of Naruto and Sasuke merging with the hands, the sculptures of the hands, and it implies, although we don't see it, but it implies that perhaps they will leave it there because a river has formed, and perhaps they might rebuild it to be something where it's Naruto versus Sasuke. Again, the heads were blown off Hashirama and Madara, but I feel like it'd be better if the fingers were intertwined to create two new sculptures of Naruto versus Sasuke right there, along with the river. So those are the two big things. Now that that's out of the way, I want to talk about these two chapters as a whole, as a final ending. Now, first and foremost, I feel like this whole thing was just. I have to say it was pretty good, in my opinion. I thought it was a decent ending, and everyone has their own opinions, and I feel like no matter what, based on this huge population that reads this, no one will ever be pleased. And of the people I have talked to who keep up with Naruto and read it, I find it somewhat disconcerting that everyone has their own opinions and they don't like something or other, and they always have to argue with me about it. Like, I don't like this, I don't like that. It's just like, is it that hard to find another person who agrees with you on some stuff, if not everything or close to everything? No, everyone has to argue about this and that. Oh, I didn't like this. Oh, blah blah blah. And it reminds me of one person who I didn't expect would read Naruto at all, or manga for that matter. He was one of those guys who was always, somewhat cynical, and just someone who was always somewhat of a hater towards not just manga but like other sort of hobbies like this, in my opinion. And then all of a sudden one day, and this always happens with him, years later, he just admits, I read this stuff too. It's just like, okay, oh my goodness. And then when I start start chatting with him about the topic, first thing he says is, oh my goodness, it should be over already. I wish it was over. They're dragging it on. I hate this thing. I want it to be over. And he said this like 2 or 3 years ago. And again, the whole mentality behind it was just, he was such a Debbie Downer. Like, first off, he didn't even like manga, and then when he likes manga, he complains about it when I try and chat with him about it, and that thus ends the conversation for that too. So for him, after pondering that and reading this chapter, I realized, heck, screw people like that. I like certain aspects of it, and I, for one, am pretty happy that there's a part 3 confirmed. He's probably not. I'm sure others are not. I'm sure others want it to be over. Then you guys should stop watching this and stop reading Naruto, and just, move on with life. You don't have to concern yourself with people who actually like it and be Debbie Downers like that. So, having said that, and again, I'll probably make a part 3 video just talking about the part 3. I'm pretty excited about it. And having said that, if you've watched my latest reviews on the last 50 chapters, I didn't particularly like them that much. I felt, again, despite saying that, there's, as a whole, I very much liked these last 2 chapters in Naruto Sega as a whole. But as far as certain aspects of the last 50 chapters, I didn't like a lot of it, because he was dragging stuff out. He's pulling stuff out of his head. Things didn't look nice. The whole thing with that final fight with Sasuke, it was just somewhat lame and underwhelming, in my opinion, with Naruto's ability. I mean, the way they drew Naruto's, or you should say, more so Kurama's new form, it just looked very lame. It was like, what was that? Was that a cat or a fox, or a fox in a jumpsuit? It was just like, what the heck is this? But moving on, for this latest chapter, we finally see everybody matched up with everybody else. Not necessarily everybody, but most people. And we do see some new characters we haven't seen before. Just I'm sure he just pulled him out of his head, matched up with people like, for instance, Choji, just so that they found someone to marry. I really had no problem with the whole thing, and I kind of like the build-up with, everyone trying to figure out, oh, I wonder who if Sasuke married anyone, if Sakura married Sasuke, or what happened. And boom, we finally find out that this girl is, at least implied to be Sasuke's daughter with Sakura, and it's just like the whole thing sort of worked out. And although it was pretty cool, at the same time, it was like, I don't know if this is what I really would have wanted to happen. It was more so just pleasing the masses. Like, obviously, there's a lot of people talking about these romances and wanting this to happen. But it just seemed like, in terms of logical character for Sasuke, and so forth, I don't know if it really worked well. It didn't really work that badly. But, I'm just unsure about that whole thing. But again, the whole general thing, I don't know what it is, but a lot of these manga chapters, when they're released, they're like, and for this anniversary release, we will give you this chapter in color. And then, like, the first 2 pages are in color, the rest is black and white. And you're like, okay, that wasn't really fully color. But then when, finally we got the last chapter and it's fully in color, which I very much enjoyed. And which leads me to my next thing, which is these this new age generation, all these new children. We have Bolt, who looks like Naruto a lot. He has this like futuristic hairdo, and same thing with all the other characters. And I just, it reminded me a lot of Digimon. When I was such a huge fanatic of the first season of Digimon. So were so many people when we watched it on TV. And then the second season came, a long time after, and it was just like, it was bizarre because it was a new batch of people, almost like the children of the first cast. And it's just like, have we gotten old as viewers? What's going on here? And although it was really cool, it just sort of reminded me, like, especially when they brought back like the old people who had grown up, who we've grown up with, such as Choji and everyone, just like older, and then just talking to the children. It was just like very bizarre because I'd grown up with this, and it's just like, damn, I think I'm old now. And it really just reminds you that, heck, this happens all the time. It's going to happen to you. And it's somewhat depressing, but at the same time, that's life. What can I say? I like to say I'm still young, but it's kind of like, when I was reading through that, it was just such a, especially when I think not Shikamaru, the guy who's like a genius, who has the black hair and the ponytail, when his son walked into the room and was just like very nonchalant and didn't really care who the heck Uncle Gara was, or what he was doing here. It was just like, it reminded me a lot of real life, where you go through a lot of the same struggles that the youth face, and then you grow up and you're an adult, and then boom, your children or other children come in and they don't give a crap about you. Even if you try and tell them, hey, I was like you once, I can help you, they're like, who's this old geezer? I don't really care. I'm a youthful kid. I'm just doing my own thing. I don't give a crap. And then you see Naruto doing the same thing with his child. Which leads me to the two things I have to be a heckler about. The first is just a small thing. The whole advent of technology, you literally see pretty much a replica of the MacBook Pro on Naruto's desk, and a little other new things. Like the first panel on the first page of the last chapter is this new instructor with these new age technology, next generation goggles on his face. And I mean, I feel like it's a time skip of maybe 10-20 years. Realistically, could you say that happened in real life that quickly? If you really look at it, no. I mean, some people are going to say, yeah, it did happen so quickly. In just 20 years, from scratch, from nothing, we got the MacBook Pro and the iPod and iPhone. So it makes complete sense. And I call BS. And it's funny because as I say that now, I'm pretty sure that if I were to talk to anyone else I knew in real life who I try to bring this topic up with, and they read Naruto, they probably wouldn't even let me finish. They would just be like, no, no, that's not true. It's very realistic. In real life, in 10 years, maybe 20 years tops, we went from nothing, from scratch, just, no technology at all, to the iPhone and the MacBook Pro. And the reason being because a lot of these people, they think they're experts at everything because they're experts at Naruto. Granted that I even allow them to be experts at Naruto, or they're actually experts at Naruto. But point being, it's not true at all. If you look at technology, it didn't take that short of time for the MacBook Pro to come out. So, again, the whole process of Apple Corporation being formed, it was not a 10, 20-year company. And machines and computers were being developed before then as well. But, putting all that aside, that's just a minor thing. Moving on. The other big thing I have to be a heckler on is just that whole thing with Naruto not spending enough time with his child. Like, again, I like the whole idea. Again, the whole thing is just sort of like, the whole chapter was sort of common sense, natural progression. All the behaviors of the children were sort of to be expected. But again, looks a lot like Naruto, and it's somewhat eerie to the epilogue of Harry Potter. Again, in a lot of ways, while I read the last book of Harry Potter, and I read the epilogue, and I don't know what it is with that sort of stuff, but I guess it's just the go-to thing to do. Harry Potter, he has a son, looks a lot like his father. He has a rival too, Malfoy's son. It was just, very similar. And then in this instance, Bolt, his son, happens to be a prankster as well. I found it though very bizarre, not bizarre, but just like, what the heck are you doing, Naruto? How I would have expected Naruto to be more of a kid as he grew up. So rather than being this sort of stingy father who didn't understand things, he would have been like, hey, Bolt, I used to be a prankster myself as a kid. Let's do pranks together. Instead, he hides that, or doesn't even remember it or recall it as this older man, which is just like one of the hugest fallacies as an adult. And the one thing I wouldn't think Naruto would forget to do. And he seems to have done it, and then he seems to have almost created the same, not the same, but a similar problem that he had as a child, was not enough attention, which is, again, very hypocritical. And long story short, I was saying the whole thing. I'll talk about this more in my other video when I talk about Naruto Part 3, but long story short, the whole thing with Naruto solving all the problems with that the infinite Tsukiyomi was trying to solve, I was a heckler that whole time, just saying like, how is Naruto going to solve this? And from this chapter ending, I don't think anything was solved. The infinite Tsukiyomi, at the very least, it did solve any prospects of war happening, strife, pain, death, loss. All those things, all those tragedies were technically solved by the infinite Tsukiyomi. In this case, the whole ending with the 5 Kage summit thing, like, it's just like, I'm really curious, did you really solve any of that? Like, you probably achieved some peace and unity, but if you look at our own real world, that sort of solution never really works for a long run. With the United Nations or anything, there's constantly going to be war. So if we haven't solved that in real life, how are you expected to solve that? Like, technically, in theory, if you look at it that way, the infinite Tsukiyomi did a better job. So there's that in mind, and that's all I really want to say in a nutshell. Oh yes, and one last thing. Generally I like the whole general idea of the last 2 chapters. So I would give it a solid 8.4 out of 10, which is pretty solid for me. I very much liked it. And again, there's always going to be a lot of people being salty, hating about it. It's just the general nature of such a variation with such a huge population reading this. I just, I felt like the author did a good job of finishing this up. A lot of authors just, I don't know what they do. They have this responsibility, and they just throw a crappy ending because they wanted to finish it. And I'm sure the author was somewhat like that, but for these last two chapters, I definitely feel like he put in the effort to finish it up. And he's gonna have haters always, but I think I have a lot of respect for him to create this whole thing. And again, the whole summary of this whole thing, this Demon Fox, was sort of summarized, and the story was ended um, with the final page of this chapter, with this whole story of this boy who ended up being the seventh Hokage, and it was all very nice, and I feel like the ending could have been more awesome. Like, oh, there's some greater meaning or purpose to this whole thing, not just some mythical tale where he saved everyone and saved the world. Wasn't really expecting that when I first started reading this. I thought it'd be some epic, moralistic, meaning of life changing thing, but it wasn't really in that way. Although Kaguya did hint at other worlds, other realms, other dimensions, somewhat ethereal meaning, or just another potential manga that's completely off base from Naruto. Maybe a space manga where we finally learn the origins of Kaguya. Again, a lot of similarities to Harry Potter. There's a lot of things that were alluded to in Harry Potter that were not really expanded upon. Other dimensions, time, space, whatever. So finally, it was generally very good, and I very much liked this whole thing. I very much enjoyed this whole process of reading through all of these hundreds of chapters and some of the anime as well. Very much like this whole process. It's a little sad that it's over, but again, part 3 is released. I will talk about that in another video. Thank you guys for watching. As always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe.